Welcome back, everyone. This is the 7th episode of A Fool's Journey, a descent into the tarot, where we're looking at the Major Arcana. And when I say we, is me, Armunn, Righ, and Silas, of course. Hello, Silas.
Hello.
Hey. And we left off in the last episode in the Death Major Arcana. So today we are going to take a look next at the Temperance, which is the 14th Major Arcana. In this card, of course, we see this angelic figure dressed in white, holding two cups, where he's trying to apparently balance the liquid of those two cups with one foot on the ground and one foot in water. With the sun, emerging from behind the mountain in the background, and of course, flowers that I don't know which type they would be, by the lake or pond where this figure is standing. So, your first impressions on the Temperance card, Silas, from what you've gathered so far.
Mm-hmm. There was something I did have, and I'll look for the infographic, where I actually managed to find an article where they make at least an identification of the flowers. I think they're lilies, but lilies, if you look at them anteriorly, they of course look like a hexagram. This is why you have the fleur-de-lis,
right?
And of course the fleur-de-lis as well is the lily from another angle, which of course looks uncannily like either the ancient symbol of Taurus, or even of course the Shin letter, or the trident, or the Trishula, the three thresholds of time, and also the Tria Prima, which ultimately creates the quaternity in the artificial element of Earth.
Right.
But to first look at the lake. The lake, as you can see, or it appears to be a pond actually, the currents are almost circular. They're circulating. They're, you could say, circumambulating. So they're not necessarily, again, it's a very small body of water. It's almost like a puddle. You can even see that where he's standing. It's very shallow. And thus, you have this idea of stagnancy. There's an idea that there is a need because of an imbalance in the matrix. I think the statement is by the architect, Neo, the one, consciousness, if you will, is the sum of the remainder of an imbalanced equation. Thus, this world, the way that it works, the chaos engine that it is, requires incremental, integral, cyclical resets to thus wash away. Again, there's that idea of the impurity of the accumulative imbalances of the quantum. Quantum information is obviously that information which is probabilistic. It can exist in many states at once, as opposed to classical or deterministic information. This is the same distinction that Jung makes between the conscious and the unconscious, and of course the subconscious, the mind, is the prism which connects the two. You see the same thing, for example, illustratively on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. But so you see that this angel, and I do make an identification of this angel, so I'm going to have to find that infographic, and I'll try and be quick about it, but he exists both in the water and on the land, so he's almost taking on this feminine quality. Again, as we see from the Zohar or Kabbalah, Yod He Vav He. So the two He's in there are the feminine. They are, of course, the first one is water, so Yod, fire, He, water, Vav, air or aether, the bridge, the spine, and then the next He, the second He, is earth. So that is where the water, as we see here, has stagnated, or its velocity has lowered, where temporality, in this case matter, can take form, can take shape. So with the, and another thing as well to mention, those three of the Yod, He and Vav, those are essentially, if you view that cross-culturally across all mythologies, it's the various strata of spiritual descent. Within Kabbalah as well, you have the four worlds concept. And obviously our world, which is Asiya, which is the world of action. That is the earth. It's the quaternity, the fourth artificial element. So that's where the spirit is bound in matter. And of course, as you see within the Dharmic religions, the entire goal is to break free from the bounds of matter, to understand that you are both the observer and the observed, that you are more than just mere matter in that sense.
Yeah.
There's another idea as well that we'll see later on, but it's almost akin to the Capricorn. And Capricorn, zodiacally and even esoterically, it's almost akin to if you had a zodiac sign that was associated with enlightenment, then it would be Capricorn, because the Capricornian or Typhonian beast is another way to describe it. The sea goat, it can exist both in land and on both land and water, and the goat as well can scale any vertical height. Thus, it can reach heaven. So the fish part of it, the aquatic part of it, is of the deep from its roots, but of course its body and its head, its solar plexus as well, that is of the heaven, or it can at least reach heaven. Another thing to mention as well, you see the road. The road is something that we'll get to later on with the moon tarot card, but the moon, the road here is not as yellow as it is in later cards. So he's still, it seems, in Earth. He's on Earth. The colours don't seem as resplendent as the heavenly or primordial realms as he's ascending, if you will, spiritually or psycho-spiritually. And then he's going that road, or the trajectory of that road is winding, again, like the river Eridanus, and it's reaching the mountains. And the mountains themselves have taken on this sort of Venetian or lunar crescent, and it's like the lunar or feminine principle. It's almost gestating the rising sun within its womb. It's similar as well to the bull, to the horns of the bull. The horns of the bull, of course, are associated with the sun and Saturn all the way back to Sumeria and Babylon and Akkadia, of course, as well. Mm-hmm. And it's this idea of Sabaoth, or the son of the sun, Marduk as well, Amarutu, that Tammuz, Dumuzid are other examples. Essentially, it's that idea of, with the accumulative imbalances, you require that salvation, and the salvation itself is the purification, not just individually of the spirit, but holistically of the entire system of matter. To maintain matter into perpetuity, this artificial world, you have to maintain those cyclical, incremental purifications, resets. So there's that idea too, but there's also another idea within Greek or Hellenistic and Roman tradition. If I recall correctly, there's this idea or prophecy where it states that the gods can be found between the two mountains, if I recall correctly. So it's this same idea that the sun is literally, from Kabbalah, the Zeir Anpin, the little face of God, that face that we see, the temporal aspect of the divine.
Right.
As opposed to Righ Anpin, which is the long face of God. It's that supernal quality that is ineffable, we don't see. It's something that unites all things. It's an omnipresent force, omniscient, omnipotent, but it's not necessarily something that is commensurable. It's not measurable. We can't really truly understand it or comprehend it from our point of view, our perception as humans. So there's that idea. So it's almost like the rising of the sun is coming. The temperance, which is the middle pillar, is being broached. We're understanding more about ourselves, but we're not necessarily there just yet. We're still in, as we see with the Splendor Solace, plate 19, I believe. We're still in the Negredo from a solar or celestial standpoint. We haven't yet fully understood who we are. There's another thing to mention too. You'll notice with the dots that surround the inner disk of the sun, it almost looks like half an egg. So that's a lunar symbol. That, of course, links with the Orphic or world egg. It's this same principle of enlightenment. And the lunar egg or stone, the stone must be hewn, the egg must be hatched. It's this idea that you see within Dharmic religions, the exits through the moon. So the moon, as we see with the zodiac, with Cancer, reaching that, if you were to extrapolate that axis up, you reach Capricorn, which is Saturn, again, as I've just stated, the illumination, enlightenment, nirvana, self-knowledge, gnosis, that sort of idea. That Cancer, or the moon, and we'll see this with the Moon Tarot card, is the gateway to that. It's the gateway to enlightenment. It's the gateway into this world and out of this world. It's almost like the regulator of the cycles, the regulator of time. Now again, that could be in a physical aspect or merely metaphorical and of a sort of higher psycho-spiritual metaphor or allegory. And then of course that reaches to Saturn, which is the seventh, the outer sphere of the world of Asiya, the world of action, the planetary genii. And obviously that is the psychopomp. Once you reach that point, it's the sort of transition between this world and the next, if you will, the beyond. So yeah, another thing to indicate is the contrast with the triangle. It looks almost like an orange or red triangle. Again, that sort of colour of the resplendence of the sun that you see on the chest near the solar plexus, the heart, or in Latin, the cord, right? The cord which dangles from heaven, like what we saw in the Hanged Man tarot card. It is that sort of lifeline to heaven that we must sort of tap into, we must traverse to understand ourselves. This is the same notion you see on the Sephirot of the Tiferet. The Tiferet is seen as the center of the egg of the Sephirot, if you were to view the Sephirot from a three-dimensional point of view.
Right.
So the Tiferet is literally the sun. In certain Zohar passages, it literally states that the Tiferet of Zeir Anpin is the sun. So this is exactly what you're seeing here. And the reason, of course, it's the upward triangle is because it's of generation. So in this point, in the initiate's ascendance spiritually, he's attempting to generate knowledge. He's attempting to generate impetus or action or even energetic transmutation from knowledge. And you see the same thing. He's diligently doing that, looking down at the cups. Now, what do they represent? What they represent ultimately is not. It is the entire cyclical worldview of, or even the cosmology, the cosmological structure of the universe. That is what the chalices represent. That is what the initiate is diligently looking at. He's attempting to understand the environment, understand the structures of the world, the way that the world perpetuates itself. Because if he understands the macrocosm, then of course, consequently, he will understand the microcosm, which is himself. So what you see with the chalices is that, of course, the vessels cannot produce their own liquid. They can't produce their own contents. the contents themselves are being cyclically moved from each mutually interdependent paradoxical polarity from the left and right. So at one point in time, the right may be in the ascendance, which is obviously the masculine axis, which is the reason for the upward triangle of the phallus as opposed to the downward triangle of the womb. But it doesn't really matter, because ultimately, whatever way the water flows, the water itself is not of the vessels. It cascaded from a higher source. Hence, as you're seeing, the higher source is the head, the halo, the solar apotheosized mind and consciousness of the initiate, which is of course represented by that angel there.
Yeah.
So it is the water in those vessels essentially is the consciousness in its pre-material form, again the first hay. So in essence, the consciousness itself is that which is producing the water. It's that which is producing the energy, producing the waveforms of the world. If you want to jump in, man.
Yeah, sure. I would say first that I didn't recognize that they were lilies, but being lilies, this would link very well with the previous card, because lilies are usually also a flower symbolizing death. The previous card was death, right? So it could be that, the lilies are growing where the world died. So where everything in the previous, let's call it incarnation, whatever, died and was used as a substrate for the lilies to grow. And this angelic figure could also be interpreted as, a risen, resurrected, let's say, from the death, right? As if he raised from his quote-unquote grave, having let go of the previous world and of the encumbrances of his previous quote-unquote, again, incarnation, right? And if that is the case, then, his balancing, as you've stated, between masculine, feminine, left, right, all the polarities, his balancing, as he tries to achieve the perfect balance, let's say, of the two cups, could be seen as, an exercise needed after the previous has died, right? So he had, there was this, it could be a worldview. It doesn't necessarily mean physical death, of course. It could be a worldview. It could be a way of being, a habit, etc. And after the death of that habit, that was, just taken away by putrefaction, it becomes stale, then it dies. Could be a sudden death, could be a slower death, but it's taken away inevitably by time. He has now arisen again and is trying to balance these polarities within himself, using also his third eye, which can be seen in the center of his forehead, like a solar disk, right? That is the astrological symbol for the sun, if I'm not mistaken. So the circle with a dot, right? And so it's his inner sun, his what I call ego. I mean, people could call something else, that is trying to achieve that balance. And that balance will be proven very necessary for the next card that we'll get there. Because now that you were talking, I realized that it's, the at the back, maybe it's not a sun. Maybe it is a volcano. Maybe it's a volcanic eruption of light that is emerging from the mountain. And if it is the case, if, that interpretation is in any way valid, what is the light that comes from the mountain? That is the Rex Mundi, right? The king under the mountain, the king of the world. And in the next card we have the devil, right? So it could be that, after death, the devil takes over. in the sense of it comes, it tempts, it leads astray even, it enslaves, and you're going to need this period of balancing to eventually release yourself from from that that harness of the devil, even though that is only achieved by the Tower card. So it is only achieved by an immediate, let's say, event that cuts off the previous connection to the devil. So I think that these aspects are very very interesting as well. I mean, as a first intuitive, let's say, way of looking at the cards from the Rider-Waite deck, is that okay? If those are lilies, then lilies are a flower usually. I mean, not only, but usually associated with death.
I just wanted to say I think they're irises, but the reason I got mixed up with them is because lilies and irises have pretty much the same number of petals. So they're like interchangeable, if you will, when viewed as the symbol of the hexagram. But they could be lilies. I looked up there. Somebody says that they're irises, but they could be lilies.
Well, in any case, regardless, the flowers could be using the substrate of what previously died there, right? And also being fed, let's say, that substrate and the plants being fed by the body of water. And this figure, we can see it as, he came down as an angel, or that he arose from death to perform this rebalancing, this exercise of rebalancing. But it seems, although it could be seen as a, let's say, positive symbol, that the light is emerging from behind him, unlike the sun emerging between the two towers in the death card that we saw previously, what if this light that we see in the background is the volcano, or let's say the mountain's opening for the emergence of that which will be released, the releasing of the Rex Mundi, because this is also something, a theme that is very present in Christianity, right? The idea that Satan will be allowed to rule for an X number of years. I think it's 1,000, isn't it? Or I don't know.
Yeah, but, I think you're correct, yeah.
Yeah, and so it could be that this is what it symbolizes, and that light is, of course, akin to what is considered the false light, right? The light of Lucifer that is seen as an angel of light, and so on and so forth. So a light coming from below, a light coming from the earth, from the mountain. The king of the mountain has been released. But this angelic figure or risen figure is trying to balance things out in preparation for the ordeal that will come. So this is a sort of respite, but also a preparation. I think that this angelic figure knows that times will still have some turmoil ahead. There will be a period of the devil card, sort of enslaving humanity, or enslaving, let's say, the mental characters, the psyche of man, that will culminate eventually in the tower. So where it ends all abruptly. But so yeah, as a first as a first interpretation, intuitive, I would say this.
I think you're spot on. Absolutely, yeah. So it's looking at that contrast then, like what you were stating, even the entire way the head is shaped, it almost looks, you're completely correct, that monadic symbol of the sun. Again, the monad, the seed, the way it shapes with the circle and the dot in the middle, again, like a seed that is essentially resembling the pure potential, undifferentiated and unmanifested. So it's that spiritual primordial, and primordial literally meaning original. It's that original conscious state. And again, as you see with this figure, it looks quite hermaphroditic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume that it's feminine, even though I believe I've got the infographic here. I put down, this was years back, I interpreted it, I think I was reading some sort of Rider-Waite brought out a book in 1910 as a sort of a companion guide to the Rider-Waite tarot deck, and I'm pretty sure I was reading that, and he states that this is Archangel Michael. That's what it's meant to resemble, but of course you have the same very hermaphroditic essence to it. It looks like a female, it looks like a lunar symbol, and the reason we can also infer that is because, as we've noticed throughout all of these cards, they all have different background colours. So this one, as you can see, has a silver colour background. So again, it's sort of Mercury, lunar, feminine, that idea. And what you're saying with the Rex Mundi, that idea of I guess you could call it the artificial sun or artificial spirit, contrasting with the true spirit. I mean, you can even see the head, it looks like an eye, right? The eye of providence. So therefore the notion is God is within you. That the moon, again, symbolically in a sort of allegorical manner, when the initiate gets to a certain point of his transcendence, he realizes, like the moon does, if you will, that he does not just reflect the light of the material sun, but he himself has his own luminescence. So I think you're seeing that here, that of course either the Archangel Michael or this initiate is looking down at the chalices, or he's closed his physical eyes and opened his third eye, right? So there is that aspect to it too. Obviously the sleeves are rolled up, which is that idea of getting to work. There's another thing to mention, that potentially this is a lunar or feminine or mercurial aspect or figure. Within medieval European illustrations, the figure of temperance as a sort of mimetic standard was always considered feminine. It was always a female pouring water between two chalices. So there is that thing to mention too. There's another thing too with the white and the red. So the red is of course part of the wings. It is the hermetic or the masculine aspect of course the white would be Aphrodite, and that's where we get the Hermes and Aphrodite, the hermaphrodite, the red king and the white queen mixing together. The same idea you see in alchemy as the coincidentia oppositorum, the conjunctio, so the union of opposites. But the masculine is associated with the air, or the wings in this case, and interestingly, it's the body, the clothed, veiled body, like the veil of Isis, the walls of Jericho, the veil of the moon, right? Even the amniotic fluid of that surrounds the fetus in the womb or in the egg, we must break forth from that. It's the same idea as enlightenment or illumination, or even as Christ stated, we're in this world, but we're not necessarily of it.
The world, yeah.
Yeah. So the masculine being associated with the air makes sense, because of course the air is a masculine sign, along with the fire. And then furthermore as well, the body or the earth is a feminine sign. So that's where that is potentially coming in. But you notice that there's a contrast between the macrocosm and the microcosm. So like what you were saying with, so we have the twin peaks of the mountains. We must make, I must state that outrightly. So this is where the Twin Peaks thing from the 90s, that sitcom, very famous sitcom, that's where it gets its name from. And of course, that was chock full of symbolism.
Of course.
But that's what it's hinting at. And so I mentioned the Twin Peak Mountains that cradle the rising sun at the back refers to the return of the sun from its sojourn in the underworld. Again, as I've stated with Splendor Solace, it's still within that Negredo transformative Mercury state. And the mountains refer to refuge and liberation. Well, I actually do say it's yellow lilies. So actually, sorry, it's not the iris, it's the lilies. I cut you off there, man, I do apologise. Of whose plan profile is that of a hexagram, refers to the Citrinitas and Albedo. The white also refers to that too. The Citrinitas is the colour right before, immediately before the Rubedo, which is the finding of the Philosopher's Stone, and of course the Elixir Vitae, the understanding of, like what you're seeing within the chalice, the reciprocity of the systems of life, or at least material existential life. The penultimate state to the renewal of Rubedo, and the Hieros Gamos, or the divine marriage of energetic and still, the male and female elements of the unconscious, the anima and animus, essentially ensuring that they are rejuvenated and integrated. Again, it's the same idea as integrating the pride and the shadow. He sits in both water and land, with the two chalices symbolising reciprocal cycles. Another thing to mention is that, so the, and this will tie in what I'm going to mention with the Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, and even the number 14 of the Temperance. But you'll notice, so you look at the back, you're seeing the macrocosm, or the celestial. Let's assume it is the rising sun, just for argument's sake, that you're seeing the celestial macrocosm being, it looks from our perspective lower, but it's exactly the same thing as you see with the cradle of the wings. It's creating the same sort of lunar crescent or Venetian cradle of the solar third eye image, the pineal gland that's been activated. Again, he's closed, or she has closed their physical eyes to then open their third eye. So that is higher. The microcosm is higher than the macrocosm, thus implying the meaning that from our perspective of the initiate that has reached to this stage on the journey of ascension, of spiritual resorption, if you will, that they've understood that the microcosm itself, like a cosmo-psychic effect, it projects matter. That fundamentally matter consciousness is antecedent to matter. So this ties in with Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, so obviously this is the 14th card. So Ursa Major has 7 major stars. It actually has 22 stars all in all, which links to the tarot deck itself. But it has 7 primary stars, pardon. And then you have Ursa Minor, which has 7 major stars as well. I forget the full number of stars, but there's 7 major ones for Ursa Minor as well. And of course, that is what, like it's almost looks like the Ouroboros. They circle the celestial pole, which is of course found in the tail of Ursa Minor, right? So again, we'll get to the microcosm and macrocosm with the major and the minor of the bear, Ursa. So this idea of Polaris, the celestial axis, the North Star, is that it's similar to the pineal gland. It's the cosmic center. It's the gateway into this world and out of this world. So it's somewhat associated with the lunar aspect. But again, it's a sort of lunar aspect which, again, to reach it, you have to understand, like the moon itself, that you just do not reflect the sun. You have your own luminosity. So again, that sort of allegory, that conception. So the major and the minor, the reason Ursa, I think it is Ursa Minor, has Polaris in its tail is because, again, like what you're seeing here, it is the microcosm itself, which of course is veiled to us who are born into this state of amnesia within the bounds of matter, the sepulchre of the soul. We are not fully cognizant of the fact that the microcosm births the macrocosm. This is from the smaller which produces the greater. It is from nothing from whence everything came. So that's the reason for that. Of course, the reason it's in the tail as well is because, like what Jung stated, like the seed, which is the monad that you see where the third eye is, of course it's also the symbol of the sun in alchemy. It is the potential itself is birthed. The potential of the seed is birthed within the abyss. It's a chthonic thing. It feeds on the darkness, or the nothingness, if you will.
And that links well with rising from the dead, right? So if we see this angelic figure as rising instead of coming down, let's say, it would link very nicely with that. And I would say also, of course, the figure in all angels are seen as hermaphroditical, because the soul itself is a hermaphrodite, right? So the soul has both male and female. Certainly, of course, and in material manifestation, it is separated and defined, but the soul itself has both qualities, right? This is something that is, of course, visible. All of us have a masculine, feminine, positive, negative, whatever you want to see, within, and that is why this hermaphroditical figure that could be, like I said, raised from death, from the previous card, is trying to balance those two out.
Yeah.
But another thing came to my mind, which is, of course, and I had to look this up as you were talking because it just emerged. I remembered that, I had seen that triangle particularly in alchemical notation, and it's of course the symbol of fire, right? But look at the symbol, the alchemical symbol for sulfur as well, right? So you have the triangle with a cross or a crucifix underneath, which would mean, for example, someone balancing two cups, right? So I wonder if, a sort of, let's say, pictographic hidden meaning, so to say, in this picture is the emergence of the actual devil that comes next. From the sulfur, from the fire and sulfur, fire and brimstone, right?
Yeah.
That emerges from the mountain that we see in the back, and he appears as, an angel of light. But he's actually got the fire symbol on his chest, right? And that fire, that triangle, also makes up the symbol for sulfur. If we, of course, in the picture, the cups are unbalanced because he's pouring one onto the other. But if they achieve perfect balance, they will look like the symbol of sulfur, right? He will be holding them in perfect symmetry, right? But this was just something that came up. I mean, I have no clue if I'm on any track with this, but...
you totally are. You totally are. See, if you look at Saturn. Saturn was known as... you had Jupiter. Jupiter was known as Phanon, which can mean... It can mean radiant. It doesn't necessarily mean shining one, I don't think. But if you look at Saturn's appellation, he was known as Phaethon, which literally, I believe from the Greek, and I looked up the etymology, and it means shining one or radiant. Now, of course, the Zohar, and I posted in the Hub of Gnosis recently, basically the Zohar's timeline for the 6th millennium which we're 214 years away from. And they provide actual dates after each millennium, be them, and they're incremental, so it'll be like 66 years. The King Mashiach will appear after the year 6000 Anno Mundi, which is 2239 AD, and then 73 years after that, and then it goes into the 7th millennium, and then it mentions, just like what we hear in the Matrix, that the heavens and earth will be remade anew. So you get this same idea of the sum of an anomaly of the sum of a remainder of an imbalanced equation. So they measure.
So Neo is the devil in this sense.
Exactly, but he's an unwitting devil. He doesn't realize it. That Neo is himself the one consciousness, because of, like what we see in the Matrix, the Oracle creates it. She creates free will. She creates choice, which leads consciousness. It corrals consciousness, funnels it into a sort of psychic funnel, if you will, where it literally, in its attempt to escape matter, the bounds of matter, it actually perpetuates matter. Now, that's not necessarily saying that it doesn't escape. I think Neo does escape the Matrix, but for those that are still within the Matrix, the destruction of Zion, this sort of incremental, cyclical resetting of it perpetuates both the Matrix and the humans which have escaped the Matrix as well. So it's this source of this paradox, this what appears to be a contradiction in terms, right? And it's similar to like what you're saying with the chalices. But the thing is, they appear to be imbalanced. But if you look at them, and similar, you see the reflection with the feet, they're actually creating a right-angled triangle, almost a perfect right-angled triangle. If you take it from the center of each cup, from the base, the center of the base of each cup to the center of the base of each cup,
right,
and conjoin them, it creates this basically a perfect right-angled triangle. But it doesn't appear to be the case on first inspection. It's similar to this world.
And the cups are toroids, actually.
And right? The cups are toroids. Bingo. Which links with the Sator square, which Martin Fleischmann, he stated that the Sator square, Sator, the sower, literally Saturn, that's where we get the word Saturn from. Sator is the root verb in Latin, the sower, or the divine sower in this sense. A rep O, from beginning repeatedly to end, ad infinitum, creates the world or works with toroids, or the toroidal vortex. So it's similar to this notion of the storm. We are within the storm. If you escape the storm, you can either escape the storm by going out into the void, into the nothingness, beyond the storm, the uncharted territory, or you can go into the eye of the storm, to be with I guess you could say the idea of the eye, the projector of the storm, if you will, right? Where the peace is located. So again, there's even this notion of, well, you can escape outwards centrifugally, which is like what Sabbatized V was seeking to do with Sabbateanism, right? Redemption through sin. But you don't necessarily know if you just go out into the void, or it's just a perpetual storm beyond the eye, the equanimity within the eye. Or, of course, you can ascend, which is a centripetal action, which is, again, going into that eye of the storm. So it's similar, like what you were stating with the sulfur and the fire. You'll notice as well, by the way, it's very hidden, but you'll notice the triangle is actually pointing to the heart, to the solar plex, just above it, and sort of crinkled in, or either written into the gown, is Yod He Vav He, which are which is the quaternity, the yod, the fire, the hay, the water, the vav, the air or the spine.
Yeah, pretending to be wrinkles of the,
Exactly, yeah, it's hidden. It's similar to the chalice. This world looks completely, unpredictable. That it is, it's random, arbitrary. But in fact, there is beyond, or even within the chaos, etched within it, there is a greater profundity at play. There's something that's a mathematical, it's mechanistic, it's proportionate, and it looks like it's been designed, albeit by a sort of insane intelligence, but it's been designed nonetheless. And so with the fire and the sulfur, so the difference is that plus sign. The plus itself is the earth. This is why you see, for example, when you look at certain symbols of the sun, you'll see the sun with the cross in the centre of it, sort of dividing up that circle into quadrants. Of course, that is the earth. The earth divides up the sun, which is the celestial clock, into its seasons, because seasonality is something that the earth requires to survive. Hence, it's intrinsically connected to the earth, the plus sign that is. So when you take away the plus, or the earth, from the sulfur, which again is the sun in its very materialistic aspect, almost like the difference between the atom, which is the material sun disk, and the Amun-Ra, which is the hidden essence of the sun, the supernal essence of the sun. The Yod-He, Vav-He, or the Arik Anpin, as opposed to the Zer Anpin, which is the sun that we see. So it's the same distinction you see, by the way, with, for example, the sun or Jupiter and Saturn or Kronos. And even beyond that is the primordial Uranus or Kalos. So it's that same notion. It's the notion of the descent of the spirit through the fire. So by taking away the earth from the sulfur, all you're left with is the fire. And the fire itself can also be symbolic of the consciousness of the spirit, but it's that which baptizes the world after every great reset. You see it with the Götterdämmerung, you see it with even Kabbalah states that first you'll have the first deluge or the first reset will be with either water or ice, and then the final one, which is the sort of grand reset, the big video game update, if you will, to use that sort of modern terminology, right? That will be
Don't bring us to simulation theory.
No, no, not at all. Just to use a contemporary metaphor.
Yeah.
That is that which re-establishes the world, because again, remember, the first hay, which is the water, proceeds from the fire, because it's basically mimicking or representing the descent of the spirit through those three prime elements of fire, earth, fire, water, and air, and then it creates the artificial vessel, if you will, of the quaternity, which is the fourth element of earth.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's what that means. That's why the fire's there, and also, like what you're saying too, with Phaethon or the Shining One, that almost it's perhaps the angel himself or the initiate is escaping the cycles, or like Neo, he's actually creating the cycle through attempting to kindle the fire within. He's actually establishing that reset.
Yeah. I wonder if really this second intuition look at it, if I'm really looking at the devil in the making, let's say. Because now, of course, we look at these wings, and these wings are very fiery, right? It reminds us of the Emperor card, for example. You know, the same type of crimson, tonality that we saw in the throne of that emperor, and very Martian, for sure, right? Very fiery, very Martian. And it really may be that, what is seen in the background, that source of light over there, is his open tomb, right? In a symbolical sense, of course. Or like he rose from that tomb, and the tomb is luminous because he is luminous, right? But he is going to, balance things out in the world through enslaving the world. That is really
well, there's another
interesting
thing
to see. Yeah,
there's another thing to mention with that idea of the angel. And this, I will agree, this is actually probably a representation of Lucifer as we understand him from the New Testament context.
Right.
Because what you're seeing essentially with the fallen angel motif, or even that metaphor, that story, is essentially man. Man is also the pentacle, basically the body of man, with the five appendages. Well, the four appendages, including the head, right? It's similar to the alchemical hand, the 4 digits, and then you have the fifth thumb, which is distinct. It's similar, but it's completely distinct from the others. And you could say it's the most important of all the digits upon the hand. So in a similar aspect, it's the fire, the yod, which is also the spirit or light, or is at least in closest to it, if you will, like the sun is closest to, or Saturn is closest to the divine, if you will, it's closest to the sun, rather. And we see that from Sumerian and in Greek and even Roman astronomy and astrotheology, that in a similar context, it is man which is closest to the divine. Man is literally the fallen angel.
Right.
He is the fallen star, right, with the 5 appendages. The pentacle itself of man, the way that our vessel is shaped, even the nervous system, everything within it, it is created upon a blueprint. It is mathematical, it's mechanistic. It almost looks, if I was to be abstract about it, it almost looks like a walking, animate sigil to maintain or to contain the spirit and the consciousness of man, which transcends the boundaries of the flesh. So it's similar to the fallen angel. The fallen angel is seeking redemption or resurrection, just like man.
I would say that perhaps, it's, man is, of course, the fallen angel, but he only fell, at least in my view, due to the pride and rejection of what he considered not to be him. It is him, it comes from him, but he considers not to be him. And this is, again, the same fallacy that perhaps stems from the original essential God, let's say. In the path to know itself, he has to, but eventually rejected parts of himself, and then was confronted with, that other thing that he sees as not himself, but actually is, right? And so in that same manner, it could be that this, let's say, devil, in building, let's say in preparation, is that same rejecting God. I mean, because look at, for example, the card of justice again, right? That is, of course, a human representation of, an attempt, like we spoke in that episode, an attempt of, pretending to be, this balance, this divine thing, this divine justice, etc. But maybe this figure is, God trying to so this initial generator of the world, trying to balance it out, and by doing that, while in judgment, causing it to, to go into the next stage, which is the devil. So becoming himself the devil, right? Because if he rejects part of himself, if he judges parts of himself, he will eventually generate the devil, right? Without, it's a logical consequence. I don't know if you're following me there, but
no, absolutely, I agree with you. Yeah, it's another way to put it is, for example, in Judaism, you have and even Kabbalah, you have this idea of shukling. So the shukling is when they do that sort of frenzied shaking, when either when they're praying or just in general nowadays. So in essence, it's the way it's depicted is that, again, like what you're stating, the fire itself is the primordial thing. It is almost like what Spinoza stated, all that is a determinate must be the product of negation. The negation, the element of negation, principal negation, is fire. So from the fire does the abyss become illuminated. And of course, like what we see with, for example, Dark Souls, very poignantly states, every age of fire, from the age of fire must proceed an age of darkness, and vice versa. So this is where you get this sort of the chalice from, right? And even the right-angled triangle is the thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It's this incessancy of the triadic structure of the world, because it derives from a tria prima, 3 primes, to maintain and perpetuate the fourth, which, pardon me, is the entombment, of matter in that quaternity, that fourth element, excuse me, in earth. And it was like what, I came across this really interesting quote, and you'll pick up on it right away, because it touches upon what, the notion, that very profound notion of the shadow and the pride. And of course that's found in John Milton's Paradise Lost, as we've went through. It states from Leonardo da Vinci, this is from his memoirs, I think, his diary, quote, "One day, having wandered some distance among gloomy rocks, I came to the entrance of a great cavern. 2 contrary emotions arose in me, fear and desire. Fear of the threatening dark cavern, and desire to see whether there were any marvellous things in it." So from that idea, if we were to extend that, extrapolate that notion out macrocosmically and in this sort of cosmopsychic sense, then what has occurred is that you had a singularity, pure potentiality, in its sort of motion, in its being, if you will, would be a better term.
Yeah.
It fell into individuality, which is undivided duality.
Yes.
So you had this sort of paradox.
Sorry, just to interject, which implies rejection in the sense of this is me, this is not me. Go on, sorry.
Exactly. Bingo. Yes. Yeah. So this is why you have to go through the process of vitriol from an alchemical sense. The vitriol it's essentially the green lion devouring the sun. Right? So it's the aqua regia, the solvent, which is the vitriol, the green solvent of Saturn, of the world, of spiritual unripeness, again, of that descent. As Jung states, you can't, the branch of the tree cannot ascend to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Right. So in that sense, with the green lion is eating the sun, because what is occurring is that the impurities within the sun, in its material fall, essentially our souls, are being purified, they're being parsed. The shadows are being integrated, the individuation of the soul is occurring. This is why vitriol is an acronym. Visita interiora terre rectificando invenius occultum lapidem, which means visit the interior of the earth, and by purifying, you will find the hidden stone. And of course, purification can only occur through the fire.
Right.
This is why all eschatologies, the world over, I mean, the most notable from my perspective, culturally, I guess, where I am in the Northern Hemisphere, would be the Norse eschatology of Ragnarok, or the Götterdämmerung, the War of the Gods, or the Twilight of the Gods. So it ends with Igni, and it's the same with Hinduism. I'm pretty sure the world ends through Agni. So they didn't change that much. Yeah.
No,
so
because it's the same blueprint, right? So it has to follow the same patterns, of course, with cultural differences, individuated to specific, languages and motifs and so on. But it has to follow the same pattern. Of course, whether, and in summary of these two views, whether this is a resurrected, and it could be both actually, but whether this is a resurrected from the previous death, who is trying to achieve balance, or this is, the devil, let's say the Rex Mundi, the king of the world, coming out of his imprisonment as an angel of light, and promising the temperance for all. It could also be, like I said, both. Like the risen is the Rex Mundi, right? The risen from the dead is the Rex Mundi. And he is going to, let's say, experiment with the world, right? He's going to see how far the world is capable of going into that rejection. And of course, later on, that whole process will be suddenly stopped by the tower, by the intervention of the actual essential divine, that will not allow it to go further into rejection, because rejection can only go so far. So, I mean, absolutely. I think that whether we see it from one perspective or the other, it all adds up, because it really could be both, no? It really could be that the risen from the dead, right, emerges as the next, quote unquote, and here we're using the word devil loosely. It's not devil in the sense of an entity as seen in Christian mythology, but in a subtler sense, right? The devil as the one that judges and rejects, right, and accepts as well, in the sense of I accept this conditionally, I reject that conditionally. And so maybe that is what this represents. And next up we'll see the devil. So I don't know if you have any further things to talk about the temperance before we move in.
There's one final thing I'll mention really quickly, just on the sun, is that it's the same idea as symbolism. So like what you're saying, it's totally multi-layered. It can be interpreted on a multiplicity of different layers. And the reason symbolism works so well, where of course normal language fails, is because what we're discussing here essentially is it's that idea of the quantum information. So quantum information is that which is it's probabilistic. It can be multiple things at once, hence this idea of superposition and entanglement. So it can't be, what we're discussing here can't be fully encapsulated by deterministic language, can't be fully encapsulated by the binary. And it's the same. If we were to stand in the midst of a hollow pyramid, right, and we were to look up through that pyramid and see all the sides and see the capstone, the apical zenith, it's similar to the sun. The sun is almost the equivalent of that, with the rays coming down. Again, if you were to view the rays of light shooting down from that pyramid, radiating at every single base, at every single point of the square base, right, the earth, that is. Essentially what it is this notion of the quantum, which is that basically everything that could happen, everything that has diverged from the nothingness, which again we see it as nothingness because it's everything in a singularity, that it has already occurred upon the earth, upon the base of that's the square base of that pyramid, if you will. It's the same with the sun, the radiating potentiality of the sun. It's the same notion. All potentiality has already occurred. That's why you have this notion of there is nothing new under the sun.
Right.
Right. And that's it. That's
and everything that is
thing.
Potential has to be manifest, to be seen, to be observed. So
Exactly.
absolutely. So now that we move to the 15th Arcana, the Devil, very well-known cards, very famous at least. What do you see there, Silas? Of course, I'll jump in afterwards.
Well. Firstly, the 15 right away, just to get this out of the out of the way. 15 in Hebrew is pronounced as Yah. So again, you're linking with the Yod He Vav He. So the Y or the Yod, the Yah, is the fire again, right? But what you're seeing here with the torch in his hand is almost like the Promethean fire. It's right. And it's held downwards, and as you can see, it's touching the hand, the right hand of the man. Well, actually, it's his left hand, the left hand of the man. It'd be from our perspective, the right, and it's on the stick
and the tail. It seems to be lighting the tail, perhaps.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, as well, it's 5 in number. There's something else that links with, but I can't quite recall it now. I think it's from the Rosarium Philosophorum, which is the Rosaries of the Philosopher. It's a 16th century manuscript. It's a type of flower. It links with that, but for the life of me, I can't quite recall it now. It probably contrasts with, as you can see, the Bacchic or feminine fruit of revelry over to the left with her tail. But anyway, the Promethean fire is totally distinct from the spiritual fire. It's akin to the artificial spirit, which is what all systems of power desire for us to crystallize our potential into. They don't desire for us to break free from the material systems of involution and of oppression. They want to keep us bound up in the fundamentals of technology and the fundamentals of man attempting to, in a sort of sacrilegious manner, conquer the spirit vis-a-vis matter. So, this final conquest of matter over the spirit, which of course never happens, and just perhaps adds to the reset or accelerates the reset of everything. But he's holding that downwards. So it's almost akin to this notion that he doesn't hold this, even the artificial spirit in high regard, or he merely uses it to control man and to set alight the lower aspects of man, hence the tail. You can see also as well within the left hand, you have, firstly in his palm, where the palm, as you see with the alchemical hand symbolism, is usually where Mercurius is, and Mercurius is obviously symbolized as the fish, which is the involuted spirit, and it is the beast of the abyss, and surrounding that beast of the abyss is the fire. So it's the symbol of, like what we saw in Temperance, the heart is being, or the primal fire of the heart of consciousness of the spirit is being rekindled, reignited. However, in its place we have Jupiter, or the 4, but we have it flipped upside down. So we have it inverted. Right. So it's almost the inverted or malefic aspects of matter itself, which is being shown here. And then we
Mm-hmm.
see him with the hand. That hand sign is in fact the Kohanim blessing, but it's actually the Shin letter. So it's the three fundamental states of time, of matter, of the elements actually. So essentially, what it means is the two couplings with the ring finger and the pinky, and then the middle finger and the index. So the middle finger and the index are air and fire, which are the masculine, and then you have over to the left, you have the pinky and ring, which is fire and water, earth and water, and then of course you have the spirit, but it'd be the sort of malefic aspect of the spirit with the thumb. This is totally out of balance, because as you see with the Baphomet's symbol, or the Benedictio, the hand of Sabazios is another idea of it. It's actually far more of a benevolent or balanced illustration of this, because you'll see the pinky and ring are usually folded into the palm, and then of course the masculine of the middle and the index are pointing upwards. This is not the case here. So you're actually seeing sort of equality, but it's a very chaotic equality between the feminine and the masculine. So it's almost like a material androgyny, if you will, which not a spiritual divine sort of bisexuality or androgyny, where it's of a higher aspect. It's actually the material manifestation of this sort of spiritual truth of the bisexual or hermaphroditic primordial or primal spirit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to jump in now, man.
Yeah. I was, one of the first things that jumped at me was the, it seems like this figure of the devil in the center, with sitting on this block that has the chains that chain these human beings to it, is like it's like the initial rejection of the self-image, of the pride of the self-image, saying to the self-image, well, you say I'm not you, but I control you through the perception of man. Right? So I skew the perception of man to control man, and therefore to control its relationship with you, right? And this is important because it is the perception, the organic, let's say, perception of man, is the tool used by the essence to know itself, right? So if the essence had, let's say, and this is, of course, we're talking metaphors and anthropomorphizing as well. But if the essence had the idea of, okay, man through perception will get to know himself, and therefore I get to know myself. But if the essence had the idea of, just know the parts that I like, just see the parts that I like. I mean, those that shame me, please don't look at them, right? If the essence ever had this idea, it is invalidated in this context by the devil, because the devil will say, no, I will show man everything. I will show man everything that we all are, right? Not just the parts that you like, not just the parts that, please you and make you proud. I will also show man what ashames you. And if needed, if you keep on rejecting, I will become grotesque. You see, it's got it got to a point. This is a being made up of, this build-up of power that comes from the rejection that I so often talk about. I will show that you use, let's say, use here in quote unquote, you use your creation to know yourself. Then know yourself, know everything, not just the parts that you want to see. I will show you everything you are. And this, of course, puts it in opposition with a self-image that, if it retains that pride, will not accept. But the truth is that, the devil, in the same sense, is enslaving himself. Because the devil can never leave that block, right? If the devil leaves that block, it all dissolves. All the perception, all the illusion dissolves. So the devil is he is the first prisoner, right? He is the first one that was imprisoned in that sense because of that rejection. But at the same time, stuck there is also the essential observation, let's say, the observation of that essence. Because it is seeing, okay, I am forced now to acknowledge, that these also must come from me. That this entity and these tendencies in man for self-delusion, for misperception, are also in me, right? So I want men to see me in a certain way, but I should allow men to see me fully, to see me how I am in the light and the dark and all the potentials that I have. Because nothing that is manifest can manifest without first existing in potential, like we've mentioned previously, right? So in the male, you have the fire, sure, the fire of war, conquest, and all, doing things, achievements, and so on and so forth. And on the feminine, you have this, could be grapes, could be pomegranates, whatever. It's the fruits of earthly existence, right? The material world, let's say. And this shows the essence that these were also there. These desires, these tendencies, everything is also there. And in fact, we can only, and this is something that seems, has become more obvious as the years go by for me, is that you, to truly know yourself, you have to truly know yourself in all aspects, even those that are displeasing, that you would prefer to not look at, right? And the devil does exactly that job, and it's a force of nature. Nature here, not in the sense of nature like woods and rivers and so on, but a force of the cosmos, if you want to put it like that, with that function. He is the prime rejection. He is the first rejection. And so his job is to show that which can't be seen or would prefer not to be seen by the essence. Therefore, the antagonism. I don't know if I made sense, but...
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah. And also as well, this is the same thing you see with even the figure of Yahweh, right? Mm-hmm. So again, what we're seeing here is a sort of chimera. Mm-hmm. It's reminiscent, of course, of Eliphas Levi's Baphomet, but ultimately it's this card is linked with both Capricorn and Saturn. Of course, that can be seen in the symbolism, but it's also stated with that companion guide to the Rider-Waite tarot deck, released by A.E. Waite in 1910. And you can see it because if you look at the earlier Marseille tarot cards, he actually wore sort of armor, or he looked almost like a cyborg, like very metallic, but rigidly metallic, like he was wearing armor in which he couldn't move. He was almost placed there as a statue upon the block. Mm-hmm. And you're totally correct. It's similar to what when Neo meets the architect, right, and talking about the the Matrix and this notion, mm-hmm. that the architect himself is not just this evil figure. He is almost the green of the Aqua Regia, the green lion who devours the sun. Yeah. He is devouring the impurities within Neo. He is showing to Neo, almost like a mirror, what the nature of Neo is. And this is mm-hmm. similar to the devil. And he mentions this.
In all its potential, so sorry, just to interject, all its potentials, because the room is filled with televisions, right? Showing Neo from different points of views and having different reactions, as if those were all his potentials, right? So go on, sorry.
Yes, absolutely. And this is why, as well, the devil, just like the Baphomet, though the Baphomet is even more pronounced in this aspect, is a satyr, or in Hebrew it's actually known as a serim, or a sair, which is a he-goat. And I mean, it was quintessentially seen as a sort of a demonic spirit. All demons would manifest themselves as this. Whenever you hear or read within the Old Testament of the haunt of jackals, the jackal itself was considered like a representation of a demon. It wasn't necessarily considered as, in the sort of ancient Hebrew context of an actual dog. It was considered as a sort of chimera figure, similar to this sort of serim. But interestingly, the idea of serim, and you have Mount Seir, which is part of the sort of triangulation. Again, the three mountains from which Yahweh descended from. And in Deuteronomy 33:2, it mentions of the first mountain that he descended from was Mount Seir. So you see, obviously, 15 is pronounced as Yah in Hebrew. Then we have the Serim, or the satyr. And of course, that's wrapped up in this devil figure too. Another thing to mention too is that, so the architect, Neo states choice, the problem is choice. The architect, the first matrix I designed was quite naturally perfect. It was a work of art, flawless, sublime. A triumph equalled only by its monumental failure. The inevitability of its doom is as apparent to me now as a consequence of the imperfection inherent in every human being. Thus, I redesigned it based on your history to more accurately reflect the varying grotesquerie of your nature. So ultimately,
it shows your rejection. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, exactly what we see with the devil, the Matrix requires us to maintain ourselves in this sort of, I guess you could call it economic materialism.
Absolutely.
This commercial materialism.
Excellent wording.
Yeah. So you've got to be maintained in that. Yeah. You've got to be maintained in this, by those chains. And you can never, they don't want you to trace the link of chains back to the sort of primary shackle, and perhaps try and find whoever is the architect of that shackle, or if the block can be moved, or if you can be freed from that said shackle, that post, similar to the Platonic cave notion. They don't desire that. What they desire is for you to maintain yourself in this sort of Bacchic or revelry state of economic materialism, which the devil desires because he gains a sort of sustenance from it. He's only maintained on his perch, on his block, on his darkened cube, vis-a-vis that sort of imprisonment, that captivity, that spiritual captivity.
Yeah, but let me just interject real quick there, just to say that, the devil both promotes the unbalanced revelry as the unbalanced restraint as well, right? Because what it promotes is, okay, you perceive yourself as balanced, right? So I'll show you all your imbalances. If you are, more leaning towards restraint, the devil will also produce restraint. That's why it's associated with Saturn. I mean, Saturn is the god of restraint. Whether we see it one way or the other, it's always the god of restraint. It's at the same time, if we could put it like that, Saturn and Bacchus, right?
Exactly.
Or Saturn and Dionysus. So at the same time. So it can go into revelry, but it can also go into extreme restraint. And the shackles work nonetheless. The only way to leave those shackles is to perceive that the shackles are actually loose, that you can just walk away. That
you can actually see that as well illustratively around their necks. It's,
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's all perception based. It's all illusion, right? It's that illusion of, like you said, economics. Because, and I said that was the perfect wording, because it is an economic transaction, or not one economic transaction. The perceived virtual reality of the world system is based upon economic transactions. I do this for you, you do this for me, right? Love isn't that. Love isn't, the let's say the mother doesn't offer milk to the cub, expecting the cub to do whatever for her, right? That is not love. Love is you give, and the more you give, the more you have. But it is built upon economics, absolutely. The more you do for me, the more I have to do for you. Otherwise, I'm out of the balance, right? I'm out of the equilibrium of this perceived reality. But what is actually doing at the core, when we actually look at it, is showing us to ourselves through this illusion. And there comes inevitably, in my opinion, comes a time when the souls of man, that are representatives of this essential being, God, however way you want to see it, when the souls of man will inevitably come to terms with this, will inevitably have to look at the imbalances of their perception and face them and deal with them, and, if necessary, act accordingly to correct them, right? Because it is obvious that if the devil moves from there, if the devil leaves that block, it all goes away. Right?
Yes.
So I'm sorry for the interjection a bit long.
No, you're totally correct. Totally correct. And it's, you even see the poses that they're making. So, for example, I always found it funny because I know the devil card quite well. I always found it funny when you look at the pose of the man. He almost looks like he's asking for coin, or he's bargaining. So you have this same economic materialism, but with both figures. Even though with the male you have that sort of pose, that merchant-like pose, with both figures they're listless. They have been sort of there's a deep resignation in their posture as well. They seem to have just given in to it. There's no, of course they could escape if they wanted to, but their perception does not allow it. They're in a sort of drunken passivity, drunken on the lust.
They think this is life.
Yes.
They're acting on a mental character level that thinks, okay, this is life. We have to deal with it. It is as Linda would say. Of course, she says it in a different context, but as Linda would say, it is as it is, right? But they are perceiving it from a very limited perception, in the sense of, there are problems, but there's nothing better than this. It's the same way as when we have politicians saying that the climax or the not the climax, but the high point of society is democracy.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So democracy is the peak of social organization, or whatever you want to call it. Right. So it is the same. I mean, people will look and say, there are flaws in democracy, and there's this and there's that. But I mean, what is the alternative, right? It is what it is.
Better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
You don't know, exactly.
Especially in the demonocracy.
The demonocracy, yeah. Soon we may have, and again, perception based. I am not saying that it's factual, because I think it will be an illusion. But soon we will have the AI God
Yes.
being presented in one way or another. And I mean, it's already in build-up. And that will be even a greater illusion, right? Because now we'll have an oracle accessible to everyone. I mean, before you would need priests, right, to interpret God or, you know, whatever. You would need intermediaries. Now, you know, with that AI God, God will speak directly to you and to everyone at the same time, right? And it will make you into everyone, because it will the cold justice of the AI God doesn't look at your individuality, right? Doesn't look at who you are. It looks at who you should be in this structure, right? So, again, the perception, or the misperception, I should say, grows and grows and grows, more and more grotesque. And it is not by chance, and this has been pointed out several times by other people, that you know, the block that the devil is sitting on looks like a smartphone, right?
Oh, so. Yeah. Wow, yes, I didn't... It also looks like a data center or like a server as well.
A rack, right?
Yeah.
So,
and also, as well, the chains are linked to the loop.
Correct.
So it's the same, and of course, even with the hinge of that loop, it looks almost like the Ouroboros. So it's the same. They're chained to the cycles, that notion. See, with the fire as well, with the torch. So the devil, of course, he controls from the left, or actually from his right. So his kindness is the mark of the beast, which is Jupiter in its malefic sense. So I would have to look up what Jupiter in its malefic sense is, but it's this sort of, again, it's sort of economic materiality. If we understand Jupiter as a sort of, is the principle of generation as opposed to Saturn limitation,
correct,
then Jupiter in its malefic aspect would be sort of economic greed. It would be greed. So this idea of the inverted four, or what is actually the plus, the Earth plus the seven linking to Saturn, right? The last planet in classical astronomy, the patient one, the psychopomp, he who is the final nightmarish obstacle for the initiate to cross, to thus go beyond the materiality of the spirit. And of course, the greatest chain is the chain of economics. You know, well, will you survive? Will you, well, if you don't do as we say, you won't get any money. Right?
Will I have enough? Will I have enough toilet paper? You know?
Will I have enough toilet paper? Yeah. Probably got so much toilet paper that, I mean, they'll probably roll in cigarettes with it. The amount of toilet paper that was bought in COVID and like what was happening in Portugal and Spain. God.
Oh yeah, yeah. I saw it immediately. By the way, just as a side note, we're talking after there was a more or less 10-12 hour blackout in Portugal this week. And I saw it immediately, people rushing to supermarkets, and one of the prime choices of things to buy, of course, among water, was toilet paper again. So yeah.
Yep. Old habits die hard.
Yeah. You need to know how to clean your... well, I was going to say it, but... Go on, sorry. Don't mind me.
Well, that links to the devil with the osculum infamy as well. You know, the shameful kiss. So
yes.
There you go.
You better have toilet paper for that, otherwise, it's going to be a very brown kiss.
The symbolism of the world who is enamored by greed and loves waste. Hence, why pride is such a why it's so prideful nowadays, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, so on the right hand aspect of it, the side of kindness or mercy, is the economic mark of the beast, which is the sort of commercial viability of the devil's entire architecture, his system. And then, of course, on the left hand side, not from our left, from the devil's left, is the torch, and he's burning man. right? He's burning from the bottom of man upwards, but it's not. It's the Promethean fire. It's a material fire, meaning it's pain, it's suffering. That's what maintains the system of the devil, through the scrying mirror, if you will.
Right.
Like the Aztec Tezcatlipoca, the Lord of the Smoking Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
He is the Lord of obfuscation. He is the Lord of the world itself. He's the Lord of night, as you can see with and winter, as you can see with the background, hence Capricorn as well.
And his bat wings, because bats are night creatures. Yeah.
Bat, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or the dragon, which would link it.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It would the bat's absolutely, of course, the bat is basically the king of the night. Mm-hmm. And men, he can see within the night, nobody else can. So and of course bats are hunters as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a predatory aspect there too. Of course, this all links with the material system, like what we see with the Matrix and the Architect, and even this notion of Lush. And so the dragon itself is seen in the vision of Poimandres, or the vision of Hermes, where he views Poimandres and speaks with Poimandres, similar to Neo speaking with the Architect, the Green Architect, essentially, just like Poimandres, the Green Dragon. And this aspect, and of course, like money is green too. Spiritual unripeness, death. Of course, when you get an infection and a wounded limb, a severely lacerated or wounded limb, then it goes gangrenous, right? So it's decomposition. It's the color of that too. And so what you're seeing there, like the devil, is with this card, is you're having to talk or discuss or to even view the devil, the architect of this system, and then you have to realize that the demiurge, the craftsman of this system, the grand architects, the devil, is actually you. Yep. It's the ego in its unchecked aspect. It's the boat, which the ego is symbolized as, that is taken on water, that is filled with holes, that doesn't truly understand itself, requires a sort of spiritual bailout. No pun intended with the sort of economic terminology, but there's other things to mention too. So the pentagram.
Let me just real quick, just to say that, I know how you are using the word ego, but to me the ego is something else. I think I would replace, in my particular case, I'm not telling you to do that, but in my particular case, I would replace ego with an abandoned mental character. And I say this because what usually people call the I is not the I, right? I in the sense of me, right? People can say, I want this, I want that, and often they don't. What is talking by or for them is an identification with something else, and that is a character, a personality that isn't representative of the actual organic will of that individual. But go on, I had other things to say, but I'm sorry, just to interject about the ego.
I was going to mention as well, so we have the W and the M shape, that obviously links with Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia is similar to the hourglass. It is, of course, the central figure within the World Tarot card. We'll get to that. And it surrounds the 4 royal stars. So it's stated biannually, as we view it from our perspective here terrestrially, that Cassiopeia flips around 180 degrees biannually, so twice a year. And she is chained to the throne or to the chair. And you can go into Hellenic mythology, it escapes me now, but it was done as a punishment for her. She was almost chained to that because of her pride. And she was the queen of Ethiopia, which is, of course, the queen of the land of the burned men. So you have this same idea as carbon, right? Which is Latin for charcoal, the product of fire. Hence, this is the world of carbon, the world of the product of the artificial flame, of spiritual bondage, earthly enslavement, where base instincts and lusts reign, if you allow it, of course. There's also there's also another thing to mention. This is also found within the pentacle, which is flipped upside down into the pentagram, and that is totally between, well, the bottom essence of that is directly pointing to the pineal gland of the what appears to be the goat-headed devil. Now, what that means is essentially it's the devil, if we allow it, of course, the devil within this world has an artificial, or pardon me, the devil, which is us, has an artificial inverted spirit.
Mm-hmm.
We could call that the shadow,
Mm-hmm.
or there's tons of terms for it. Even alchemy has several terms. So either the artificial fire, something that's artificial, it's of a material essence. So that also is linked with the inverted horns, which
Mm-hmm.
is Taurus, as opposed to Aries, which are facing upwards. So again, Aries, which is in an ascent, Taurus, which is in the descent, it's of a more stasis quality, which obviously links it with the earth. Links it with Aldebaran as well, which is to the west, as opposed to Antares, which is to the east. So the west is obviously the sunset, hence darkness, hence winter, hence twilight. All of these concepts are displayed and conveyed within the devil. You'll notice as well, evil and live are actually inverted too, because it is evil to live within the world of matter, right? And of course the devil is lived. That is the past tense, because within this world, the way that it anchors you here is through the three poisons. The three poisons, specifically desire and generally unfulfillment, which can encapsulate all of them essentially as a descriptor, as a definable descriptor, bases itself upon the past. It wants you to become anchored to the past, to never truly, again, parse the shadow, individuate it, integrate it, to make sense of the trauma of the past. It wants you to constantly live in the trauma of that past. It's another way it controls you. Hence the devil, hence lived, which is the reverse of it. Also, devil is 5 in number. So, in terms of the letters, that it's very much linked to the same idea as the pentacle and the pentagram and the 5 elements. He controls that. He uses that to craft his world. It begins with the D as well, which is the Da'at. So the Da'at, as an idea, is a letter as well within, the Dalet, pardon, as a letter within Hebrew, is also, pictographically, it's like a door. So basically what you're seeing with the devil is he is the psychopomp, the ferryman, the gatekeeper between this world and obviously the spiritual abode, the primordial. So there's that aspect too.
Yep.
I'll let you jump in, and then I'll just finally finish on the sort of 3 aspects of him: the chimera, and the goat.
Sure.
If you wanted to jump in, yeah.
Well, I will take us a bit back, but I will segue through what you said about reliving the past, which is absolutely key. Yes, it points towards reliving the past, not resolving the past, which is 2 different things. You have to revisit the past for a revaluation, but the idea promoted by the system of power, in the sense of this devilish control, is to apply guilt. So guilt is when used by one side or the other, a way to perpetuate the past, to make the past the present and therefore the future, right? Because if you are, if you quote unquote sinned 10 years ago, right? You can't change the past, so you're a sinner now. You sinned once, you're forever a sinner, right? And so that determines your future. In a perception way. I'm not saying that you actually sinned. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I mean, it depends from each case. Yeah.
just to really interject with this quick point, that also links with Saturn through judgment and time.
Judgment,
as well.
yeah, absolutely. Saturn is the judge, exactly. And judgment, in the sense of the application of guilt, especially when it comes to past things or things that became chronic because the past keeps getting relived in a sort of loop and not revisited in order to be resolved by that organic, pure perception. It perpetuates onto the future, like I've said. And this is what creates these chains that we see in this card, which is nothing short of a relationship of power. Okay? And it is not by chance whether, we see them as genuine or not, but it's not by chance that some currents saw the God of the Old Testament, as you did, you wrote a book on that, as the devil, right? Because it creates this guilt relationship of power, of course, among other things, but it generates this relationship that is completely imbalanced between the power, those in power and those without it. Mm-hmm. And that is entirely based on guilt. It is entirely based on, unachievable redemption. And so, to me, this is a very, very key point of how we can, in ourselves, awaken. Okay, I call it ego. Let's call it something else for those who have a problem with that word. But to awaken that essential connection within us, right? That can actually have the perception of what is there. And I repeat something that I've said elsewhere, which is, contemplation is not clearing the mind, like meditation, is not seeing the world from a different perspective and so on. No, contemplation is see what is there. And if what is there is grotesque, then say it is grotesque. Admit it is grotesque. Okay? If what is there is beautiful, in the same manner, admit and accept it is beautiful. Don't have any problems with, accepting what is there, right? Because anything that you add towards the negative or towards the positive is already a rejection. And so it feeds the relationship of power, right? And often it takes, of course, perception, pure perception on one side, and then action to release yourself from at least the internal chains of the relationship of power. Certainly man cannot be free externally, even in an organic sense, right? There's always limitation here. This world is built on limitation for a purpose, in my opinion. But it can be internally free from those chains by the organic perception of the ego, or if you prefer, the essential vehicle, let's say. Sorry, now you can you can finish your point.
Oh no, absolutely. I think as well. So we see the spiritual nakedness of these sort of satyr-like beings. Mm-hmm. Oh, before I get to that, I forgot to mention. So when I was touching upon, if you look at the feet, of course, there's 3 claws on one side and 3 claws on the other. That's the 6. The 6 is, of course, opposed to the 9. We see that within the Cancer, the sign of Cancer, zodiacally, where the 6 is almost akin to the descent vortically, like through the, if you were to stack 666, the mark of the beast, in a sort of vertical, it would establish a sort of vertical spiral downwards. So the 6 is the cementing of the spirit within the bounds of matter. That's what it represents, esoterically speaking. But the 3 as well, as the, of course, Saturn, its orbit is 30 years. So funnily enough, you actually see that in one of the Hebraic gematria ciphers for Yabulon, or Ya, Baal, and On, which numbers 30. The ordinal value is 66, and of course just the general gematria Hebrew gematria value, because obviously it's alphanumeric, is 174. That is a number in Kabbalah that links with concealment and exile, which is exactly what you see of the devil. The way it's hunched over and perched, it's writhing, or not necessarily writhing, but it's hiding within the shadows. It's a coward, ultimately. It's a parasite as well, right?
Right.
So the host must become aware of this parasite and, sort of like a bad case of the fleas, shake it off from oneself. So that's what the 3 could represent. The 3 also represents the Tria Prima, the 3 aspects of time. This is obviously a timely being, but the M as well is also the 13th letter in both the Hebrew and English alphabet. So in Hebrew it's the Mem, and the Mem, if I remember pictographically, so firstly, Mem has a value of 40, which obviously links with the base of the pyramid, the square, right? But as well, you have the Mem is also linked with the lightning bolt. So it pictographically, in its most archaic form, it takes on a sort of lightning bolt quality.
Right.
So it looks like similar, like the descent. It also can relate to water as well, within the Proto-Semitic Me. So there's that to mention too. I believe in the Phoenician alphabet it also took on the sort of qualities of water, the way it was spoken of and written about. The M2, so linking to the 13th, links with the idea of transcending, or at least, one full rotation of the zodiacal wheel. So it's this notion that you see within the Bhavra chakra. The devil would obviously be Yama. It's that controller of the wheel. It's the shadow which keeps us all anchored to it. And of course the darkness as well. It's a way for it to ensure that it becomes incomprehensible or imperceptible. The problem itself is imperceptible to man. We know this because as we're born into the world, we're born into a state of amnesia. We don't know who we are, what this place is. It appears to do so, or it appears to be the case, because it was designed to be that way. It's working as intended because it's a defense mechanism to maintain the simulacrum itself, the sort of a cosmic facsimile in which we reside within. And
I would just say that at the end of the day, although it is true what you said, the perpetuation is consciously the main objective, right? But I think that unconsciously, what it wants more is to be seen, is to be acknowledged, is to, even if necessary, be quote-unquote defeated, not necessarily by arms or revolution, I'm not talking that, but to be defeated in order to return home. Because, again, if we are talking about products of rejection originally, right, and if the means that are found to be seen are to expose the shameful aspects, right, what it wants most is to be recognized, is to go back, is to be to hear the words of yes, you are me after all, I was wrong.
Yes.
And
well, it's
go ahead.
Sorry to interject. It's similar to this concept of vitriol, and also as well of course in the Divine Comedy, right? Of you have Inferno, Purgatio, which is the Middle Earth, if you will, where we dwell. Hence the greenery, which is the middle color of the light spectrum, and then Paradiso. So in Purgatio, literally it's a Latin verb to purify, to purge. So it's like what you're saying. The devil himself is a prisoner of his own design. The devil is us. The demiurge is us. Therefore, we must understand that the craftsman, which is a sort of creatively destructive being, a divine, insane intelligence, which really that is humanity. If you look at the way we act, I mean, 1 minute we can be, perfect beings. The next, we can, just give in to our own gluttony, self-interest, and like what we're seeing here with the hairiness of it all, this barbarity, even the swarthy skin and complexion from alchemy, that also links with a sort of a symbol of barbarity too. So, yeah, sorry, man. Please finish your point.
No, well, I was more or less finished, but it's the idea is that at the end of the day, I think that unconsciously, the quote unquote devil, and again, I have to reiterate that we're talking metaphorically, not literally, wants to be seen, wants to be discovered, wants to be acknowledged. Like you were using the example of the Matrix, the architect wanted Neo to find him. Right?
Exactly.
The architect was expecting him even. He said, well, you would be led inevitably here, right? So the architect didn't step forward because he could never leave the block that we see here on the card, right? He could never leave. If he leaves the block, the entire system collapses, right? So he has to have you, the Neo in this case, come to him, find him, but only to be exposed, only to be seen, to be acknowledged that he exists, that he is part of that, pool of potentials that make up the essence, And this is often a stumbling block because, there's this inculcated cultural idea of the perfection of God, when that perfection is measured by already cultural human terms, right? What is perfection in that case, right? What is perfection? In one culture, moral perfection is one thing. In a different culture is a different thing. So what is? Which one is it, right? Any of those or none? The idea is that, everything that is manifest, and of course we can innately recognize that which is beautiful from that which is grotesque. Of course we have that quality, right? But we cannot say that that which is grotesque didn't come from the same pool. It came from the same pool. The problem is that instead of being used and placed in the healthy, correct place where it belongs, it was left out, right? Yeah. And by being left out, it has to make itself seen. Hey, I exist. What are you talking about? I exist, right? And this is the great preoccupation. When people talk about selfishness, what is the great preoccupation of selfishness? Is I exist. Notice me. Care for me. Take care of me, right? Before you even, understand that when you take care of the other, you are taking care of you. Right? And that is the organic thing. That is the organic love, let's say, which is in contrast with the economics of a power relationship. And the power relationship always has one receiving, one giving. Only. It's one-way street. Even if it's masked as a two-way street, no, it isn't. It isn't. Just try to, not pay your taxes and see what happens. Right? Hello?
Exactly. Yeah.
Did I lose you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah. Oh no, I was going to say, yeah, I already tried that one. It was it's no fun and games. Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of other things I was going to mention. I don't think we're going to get onto the other card today, but
no, we're reaching 2 hours. Yeah, maybe we should leave it for the next episode. But go on.
I've got a few other things to mention just to finish off my general takeaway from the symbolism of this card. And so we have the fire on one side. I think you already mentioned it. And so the fire is sort of conquest, even lust, the sort of instinctual, primal aspects of the satyr people, which are, again, they're sort of in their bestial aspect, and again, that's where the devil desires for them to be. So they're between civilization and the wilderness, essentially, but in a extremely animalistic sense. It's man as the animal, not man as the mind or man as the mental character, and then above that, which is obviously the actual spirit of man. Another thing to mention too is that the goat itself, so firstly, he's fat, so he's gluttonous to revelry. All of these ideas are contained there. You have the hooks on the wings, which seem to be hooked into the darkness. So it's this idea within man that there's a part of him, the animalistic aspect of him, that desires for himself to cling on with dear life onto the worldly matter. And of course, you'll find that there are 6 hooks, 3 on either side, in this sort of same triangular pattern as we see with the goat. It's this downward triangle, which is symbolic of the chalice. And you mentioned with the chalice on the Temperance card, it looks like a vertical spiral. And it's similar to the fallopian tube. We literally come into this world, you could say, through a wormhole or a toroidal vortex, through the fallopian tube, through the birth canal, all of this. Again, that's linked with water too, with the M and the mem. The M as well is also the symbol, the statistical symbol of bimodal distribution, which is the harvest, which obviously links with Saturn too. And as well, the goat could link with this notion of the scapegoat, which is if we look at this, the cosmic error, which was committed by Sophia's sin in the Gnostic idea, then we are the scapegoat. The involuted spirit is the scapegoat. That we are almost like Christ. We must be crucified upon the 4 elements to thus understand the 5th element, which survives the death of the torture of the devil upon our material and mental faculties or character. So that which survives is the heart on fire. In that sense, it's a symbolism of the spirits, the Mercurius, the hidden God, the hidden aspect of God which resides within man, or the fragment. Talking about the vertical spiral or the fallopian tube, you also see as well the cern or the cairn, which is Celtic or Gaelic for horn. This is why CERN is such a huge thing. And of course, it's in a giant circle as well. Both the particle decelerator and the Large Hadron Collider. And you'll notice there are 17 sections to that horn, which is the vertical spiral, and it's moving downwards, right? So the idea is that we are sort of cycling downwards in a sort of vertical spiral, similar to the notion of the 6, right? So that is we're sort of being manifest into this world through a transmutation, through a sort of toroidal wormhole, if you will. There's that sort of aspect, that notion that you see throughout the mystery schools. And you'll notice there are 17 sections on either side. 17 links with the star, if I do recall. I think I'm correct in saying that. Let me check very quickly. The star. So it's the same notion. Yeah. It's the same notion as that sort of lunar feminine menstrual cycle and birth cycle. The souls come in, the souls go out, reincarnation, this notion. But as well, 17 plus 17 on either side is 34. So it's this notion of the tria prima, which produces the quaternity, or the artificial 4th element. This is also found in Kabbalah with the prophecy of the Shet, which of course means a totally different thing in English, but it's the compound of the shin and the tav, which is the penultimate, the 21st letter, mixed with, or combined, merged with the 22nd letter, the tav, the end, which according to Kabbalistic lore, the Zohar, in the primordial state, in the Adam Kadmon state, these two letters were fused together and there were only 21 letters. The reason for that is because the Fool's Journey, the 0 card is the Fool, the 22nd card is the Fool, Alpha, Omega, there were no Alpha and Omega. There was none of that duality in the primordial state. It literally ended with the world. It was just the world, that was it. There was no end, it was immortal. Also as well, you'll notice the horns looks like the fornix, which is the arch-vaulted chamber, the two pillars that surround the thalamus, the inner chamber of the pineal gland and the mind. The fornix etymologically also means the arch or vaulted chamber, which essentially that is the notion of the celestial ceiling. I think it's Enoch's vision or Ezekiel's vision. He talks about the lofty chambers above the ceiling of the firmament. It's basically he's talking about this, which is the ceiling that surrounds the Holy of Holies, the thalamus, the inner chamber, the seat of the soul, the seat of the spirit of mankind, which of course the thalamus acts as a chamber of. You could even see, by the way, that which the devil sits upon as actually the Ark of the Covenant, which sits in the Kodesh Kodeshim, and of course code is what they're trying to create this artificial god out of, that they can control, the internet of all things. And it was said that Yahweh actually sat upon the Ark of the Covenant like the devil you see here, perched upon it. Right. And the Ark of the Covenant in the Kodesh Kodeshim is similar to the sort of Holy of Holies, the inner chamber of the thalamus within the brain. And of course, the Ark of the Covenant would be the covenant between the mind and the body, and of course the spirit, the conjunction between them all, hence the covenant, the contract. So yeah, you'll notice the fornix of the devil horns is associated with that too. So yeah.
Well, I would like to just comment really briefly before we finish this episode. I think it was quite interesting. I think we delved a lot into these two these two Major Arcana cards. But I would just like to comment about what you said previously of, the Christ being crucified. And yes, I see that, yes, the Christ that is tortured and crucified, that is symbolic of this devil existence, let's say. Because it is the interest of that Christ that is crucified is the maintenance of the mental personalities as they are. So you redeem the sinners by them not having to change, right? And so you basically torture the scapegoat. But I think that the, let's call it divine, essential, whatever you want to call it, Christ is the one that instead of being tortured, in the end of the story, he would be coronated.
Yes.
So I would just like to make that distinction, in my opinion, that is very, very important. The one that is tortured is the one that wants to maintain things as they are. The one that is coronated is the one that is telling people, well, if you want things to change, you change, right? Let's say, in the mental character level.
I was going to mention really quickly, and I'm glad you brought that back up, because I was just thinking there. So you have the scapegoat, which is obviously the devil here, right? And like what you're saying, that is the inversion of the Lamb of God, which is obviously Aries, right? Of course, you had the sacrifice, the Aryan sacrifice, that sort of foreshadowed and coronated the Piscean age. obviously that's all linked with this as well. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, the ones who are being tortured are those that, I don't know, they're sort of like spiritual masochists, aren't they? In some way, you know, they are the ones.
You know,
that,
a lot of it is just habit, you know, and we can be surprised when we self-observe how much of us is made of habit. You know, and once that habit is exposed, and once we reevaluate our essential will, then we can act upon the change of those habits, or not. I mean, there are habits that are, you know, in accordance, right? But how much of, you know, masochism, like you say, and all of these things is merely a product of habitual, you know, thinking and acting, you know, just habits, just automatic habits that are not observed.
Mm-hmm.
And once they are observed, they're brought to light. They lose at least as much power as they had, and they can be corrected or changed, whatever you want to say. And once they are corrected, you no longer need the scapegoat, right? Because now you have redeemed, let's say, the quote-unquote sin, right? You don't need the to kill and torture the scapegoat anymore, which then translates into, you know, the most basic layer of social life as the villain out there, right?
Yeah, and also I was going to mention as well, the etymology of habit comes from the Latin habere, which is to literally manage something.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, similar to the devil, you know, like what you're saying. It's similar.
He's the manager. He's the manager, right?
Yeah, through habit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bingo, man. Yep.
That's right, man. So, I mean, I think it was a great episode. This was episode number 7. We went into the Temperance and the Devil. Any final remarks, man?
No, but it's absolutely coincidental. Totally coincidental that it's the 7th episode. And obviously that links with Saturn, and we've just went over the devil.
Yes.
It wasn't planned that way.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, we're both in on it, man. We agreed it, yeah. All right. So excellent. Thank you all for listening. This was episode 7 of A Fool's Journey, A Descent into the Tarot. And I hope to see you here for the next episode. Thank you.